At the dawn of the ages, you pulled land from the sea. With your word you invented all we know, all we see. Creek and desert and forest, red and gray kangaroo. You were in this place, but we never knew.
Painting seen on the rock face, footprints left in the sand, campfire next to the river, songs that rise from the land, signs that seem so elusive, shadows just out of view. You were in this place, but we never knew. Do we take off the Jacob, blind to what lies at hand, needing dreams to inform us? God is here in this land. See Him suffering and dying, bread and wine tell the news. You were in this place, but we never knew.
Jesus, open our senses, help us see you today, in the person beside us, as we work, as we play.
While we love you and serve you, may it never be true. You were in this place, but we never knew.
Listen in the quiet, in the rough and tumble of the daily living. Do you hear the rumble? Do you hear the whispers? Look in the dark, in the bright light of the day. Do you see the dance? Do you see it? Do you see the movement? For all creation declares, all life moves in an interweaving dance of joy and celebration. It is good and comes together in worship, in grace, love and fellowship.
A reading from the book of Genesis, translated by Reverend Dr. Richard Swanson. At the beginning of God's creating of the skies and the earth, the world was a wild chaos, darkness over the face of abyss, breath of God moving gently over the face of the waters. God said, "Light," and there was light. God saw the light. Ki tov, oh, how good. God separated the light from the darkness. God called to the light, day, and to the darkness called night. Sunset, dawning, one day. God said, a dome amidst the waters, and separate waters from waters. God made the dome and separated the waters that were below the dome from the waters that were above the dome. It was so. God called to the dome, skies. Sunset, dawning, second day. God said, waters under the skies gather, and dry land appear. It was so. God called to the dry land, earth, and to the gathering of the waters called seas. God saw, ki tov, oh, how good. God said, earth, grow grass, grow plants that bear seeds, grow trees that bear fruit upon the earth. It was so. The earth brought forth grass, plants that bear seeds after their kind, trees that bear fruit in which is their seed after their kind. God saw, ki tov, oh, how good. Sunset, dawning, third day. God said, lights in the dome of the skies separate the day from the night, stand for signs, for seasons, for days and years. And lights in the dome of the skies provide light upon the earth. It was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light for ruling the day and the smaller light for ruling the night. And the stars. God gave them to the dome of the skies to provide light upon the earth, to rule the day and the night, to separate the light from the darkness. God saw, ki tov, oh, how good. Sunset, dawning, fourth day. God said, waters swarm with living beings, and birds fly across the earth, across the dome of the skies. God created the great sea serpents and all living beings that creep, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and all winged fowl after their kind. God saw, ki tov, oh, how good. God blessed them, saying, bear fruit, be many, fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds be many on earth. Sunset, dawning, fifth day. God said, earth, bring forth living beings, herd animals, creeping things, wild life of the earth. It was so. God made the wild life of the earth after their kind, and the herd animals after their kind, and all creeping things of the ground after their kind. God saw, ki tov, oh, how good. God said, let us make a groundling in our image according to our likeness. Let them be responsible for the fish of the sea, the birds of the skies, animals, all the earth, and all creeping things that creep upon the earth. So God created a groundling, created it in the image of God. Male and female God created them. God blessed them. God said to them, bear fruit, be many, fill the earth, control it, be responsible for the fish of the sea, the birds of the skies, and all living things that crawl upon the earth. God said, here I give to you all plants that bear seeds that are upon the face of all the earth, and all trees in which there is tree fruit that bears seeds. For you shall they be for eating. And also for all the living things of the earth, for all the fowl of the skies, for all that crawls about upon the earth in which there is living being, all green plants for eating. It was so. Now God saw all, everything made. Look, ki tov, oh, how good, Oh, exceedingly good. Sunset, dawning, 6th day. They were completed, the skies and the earth, with all of their host. God completed on the 7th day all the work, all that was made. And then God ceased on the 7th day, ceased from all work, ceased from all making. God blessed the 7th day. God made it holy. For on it God ceased from all work that by creating God had made. These are the birthings of the skies and the earth. This is how they were created. In this is the word of the Lord.
The beginning. Word. Spirit. Life. The dance begins. Interweaving between chaos and order. Movement and community giving birth. And it is good. Very good. Wonder, delight, joy, love. Brushstrokes full of colour. The storyteller bringing meaning. A conversation of change and dynamism. Journey begun. Very good.
So here we are, Peter, just you and me this week, due to different circumstances. But it's Trinity Sunday today. It's always Trinity Sunday, the one after Pentecost. And we commented in our conversation earlier in the week that sometimes the only way to respond to the idea of the Trinity is with music and poetry and art and maybe dance. So maybe people are dancing at home by themselves. And that reading from Genesis that we've just had and the hymn that we've just had and your poem talk about the chaos at creation. And it might be a little difficult to see how this leads into the Trinity, but that's what's struck me this week, is that idea of the chaos at the beginning, because we're living in chaotic times. We'd already been dealing with COVID-19, and now there's the images we have from the United States and further around the world as well of utter chaos.
Here, what we see also in our reading is that into that chaos, God brings order. And a lot of people latch on to the order component of it. And it's a very structured passage that we read. It breaks up creation into 6 very distinct days and specific, and even those 6 days are patterned, 3 to start with, and then those 3 are developed in the next 3. So you have light becoming in 4 days, on the 4th day becoming the elements that give light, and so on. So others will come back to you and say, you see chaos, we see order.
Yes, that's right. I agree with you that it's about order and chaos, but I'd actually like to sort of turn it around a little bit. Sometimes it can be a problem that we are looking for the world to be just ordered and structured, because God has breathed order over chaos, because we lose the wildness that comes in creation. I mean, plants aren't tame, animals aren't tame, even though it says about people having dominion over the earth. It's not a taming idea, it's an alongside, and I think we need to think about the wildness and the movement of the Spirit and where the Spirit moves and all of that sort of thing in creation, because God breathed into it.
Yeah, and it's that sense of the Spirit hovering over. the ordering that maybe there is not in the way that we think of order, like rules, regulations, structure, a rigidity. There's not a rigidity about it. There's a fluidity about it, which comes in, which gives that impression of chaos. But there's, it's funny, the order that it comes there, there's almost like an interplay, a dance between an ordering. And last week we had the reading from John, and I mentioned in my reflection about John opens his gospel with a reference to, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the reference there is you've got the sense that the Word almost gives that, say, order or shapes what's happening. But a shaping, even what a plotter does when the plotter shapes, brings some kind of order. There is roughness and fluidity with all of that. So it's almost like there's an interplay between chaos and ordering, but not necessarily the order. It's not a rigidity. And I suppose, chaos is frightening. The chaos you're talking about is a frightening thing. And I'm sure if we're there in the beginning, seeing the volcanic eruptions and the traumatic movement of the earth to make mountains, the tsunamis as the ocean floors were moved and things like that. But creation is, that dynamism is not a restful thing.
No, that's right. And I think we sometimes lose sight of that. We want everything to be neat and tidy. And even as we look at the Matthew reading about, making disciples of all nations, in the past, often Western Christians have gone into other countries and other cultures and wanted to impose their sort of sense of order without seeing where God already is in that, where the Spirit is already breathing and moving in that community, and picking up on that and finding the life in that, what might be life-giving. And it's given us some problems, I think. It's given Christianity some problems along the way, that searching for imposed order, which is not what I think the creation story is about. It's about that interplay that you talked about.
Yeah, that interplay, and you see that a little bit in the Psalm, from Psalm 8, God's knowledge of humanity. But one of the things we always talk about is how we are created to be free, made in God's image, but created to make our own decisions and freedom. And we're free to move within that. But it's a constant interplay that God calls us back to what we're created to be. We're free to choose that or not. So there's, and I love the word of dance applied to that, because it's that interplay. The other word I was using before is the improvision or improvising. And I'm constantly thinking of, when we talk about the work of the Spirit and this chaos versus ordering, there's like this interplay, this improvising. The Spirit improvises, but a good musical improviser does that improvising within scales and pattern and structure. And so there's a framework they work with, and they're responding or leading into something. And so there's purpose and mind and heart behind it all. And we see that. So when Jesus speaks to Nicodemus and says the Spirit moves where the Spirit wills, we don't know where it's going and how it's going to work. And there's a wildness to the Spirit, yet that wildness has an order and a mind to it. We don't know and we don't understand it, but it moves in spaces beautifully.
Yeah. And you raised there the psalm mentioning about us being made in the image of God. And I think we've both listened to the By the Well podcast and their conversation about how our image of God impacts on our image of ourselves as human beings, but also our image of what the church is. So if we think of God as this sort of big, old, lonely, they said, man by himself, making all the decisions by himself, doing everything by himself, that has an impact on how we see ourselves and our faith. But that if we understand God as this loving community of the three in one, or however we want to describe it, but that God is love, God is a community, then we are called into community with other people. And our way of being in the world is as part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's what we want to take into all the world and make disciples of all nations. Not that authoritarian, you must do this, but that dance and inviting people into the dance with us, because we found something life-giving in this. So come join the dance, people. Come in. It's great. You know, it's not always smooth sailing, but there's something here in this community that we think represents God and reflects God's love into the world.
You don't want to see me dance, I'm afraid.
Yes, we do. Actually.
No, you do not. That would be one of the blooper shots of the century. A bad dance at its worst.
Yeah, well,
but isn't it great that we don't all have to be dancers and performers? And as we talked about with the passage from Corinthians last week, where the Spirit gives us gifts, we each can be different. And so that's where the community becomes so special and important, that we each make a contribution no matter what it is. We don't have to be dancers. We don't have to be all the same. And that interplay brings life and vitality. Now, obviously, there is patterns and interplay that brings order and structure, but it's really useful. But again, when we make that order and structure rigid, it becomes destructive. But if we become too laissez-faire, that's also harmful. So that interplay between the two, and Paul discusses that extensively in his letters when he talks about freedom, but freedom for what? Freedom to bless, and freedom I'm free to do, but if I do certain things, that's not necessarily good. So, we need to work. Just because we're free to do something doesn't mean to say that's the best way and the calling that we have.
Yeah, the question is, what does God do in the face of chaos? And God breathes into it. God brings creativity into it. And God creates some sort of order by being creative, by coming up with something that hadn't ever been seen before. So, just breathe and look for where God is breathing into the chaos of our lives and the chaos of our communities at the moment.
That's a really good question. We really do need to keep on asking ourselves, particularly as you say, we see the chaos that's happening elsewhere and we're in a space we're not used to. Almost an imposed, forced, with the COVID restrictions are a forced imposed order. And so we're seeing both tensions and the interplay between them. And we want to swing from one, when we've got rigid rules on us, we want to break out and be free. But when we've got unfettered freedom, we want some structure, some order. So how do we allow the Spirit of God to work in this and bring community when it's hard to do so, when it's not safe to do community the way we've done it? So that's why we have to find new ways of doing community. And the questions asked, I think, are important. Sometimes we don't have answers, but don't think that's necessarily a big problem. The question themselves can take us on a journey.
Yeah.
And because then when we ask a question, we're listening, we're trying to find out. And that means we're looking, where's the Spirit leading? What is God doing? How can I be on board with what God is doing?
Yes.
We try, we fail, do too little, too late. We wish we could walk away. We hurt, we're hurt, nothing seems to work. We don't know what's right, hard to see without sight. Blindly we come to you. Forgive us, forgive us. We know not what we do. Be with us, be with us. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to pray here, stay here. All we hope is that you're here. Help us seek justice, love, mercy, walk humbly here. Forgive us, forgive us. We know not what we do. Be with us, be with us. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We light a candle for hope and a world that's longing for hope. We light a candle for hope and a world that's longing for hope. Holy One, shine with the fire of our lives. Oh,
Let's say together the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples in whatever form that we have learned and are comfortable. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread and forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us in the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. I ask myself, what is it about human beings that God has time for our worries? What is it that is precious enough for God to take such care of us? It seems we've been made almost like gods, crowned with honour and responsibility. We've been made stewards of God's handiwork. The health of all creatures depend on us. So take courage, seek consensus, live in peace. May the extravagant generosity of the Lord and Messiah Jesus and the love of God and the tender solidarity of the Holy Spirit be within and around you all. Amen.